Nosheen Khan. Thank you so much for coming on time. I am going to invite Anis Muqaddam and Ria Ali to recite some verses from the Quran and read the translation. Okay?
Assalamu أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد كرمنا بني آدم وحملناهم في البر والبحر ورزقناهم من الطيبات وفضلناهم على كثير ممن خلقنا تفضيلا يوم ندعو كل أناس بإمامهم فمن أوتي كتابه بيمينه فأولئك يقرؤون كتابهم ولا يظلمون فتيلا ومن كان في هذه أعمى فهو في الآخرة أعمى وأضل سبيلا.
The translation is as follows. In the name of God, the most gracious, the dispenser of grace. Now indeed we have conferred dignity on the children of Adam, and borne them over land and sea, and provided for them sustenance out of the good things of life, and favored them far above most of our creation. But one day we shall summon them, all human beings, and judge them according to the conscious disposition which governed their deeds in life, whereupon they whose record shall be placed in their right hand. It is they who will read their record with happiness, yet none shall be wronged by as much as a hair's breadth. For whoever is blind of heart in this world will be blind in the life to come as well, and still farther astray from the path of truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Ria and Brother Anis. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, all praise is due to God, the Lord over the universe, and may peace and blessings be upon Muhammad, his beloved messenger. Good evening and welcome to Salam Islamic Center. We thank you for joining us tonight to discuss honor within Muslim communities. With this important discussion, we seek to delve into the concept of honor and the role honor should play in the modern Muslim mind. Unfortunately, we know that honor has been used over the years by Muslims and non-Muslims in the USA and abroad to justify acts of violence towards others. The UN estimates that around 5,000 women and girls are murdered each year in what are called honor killings by members of their families. These are the only reported incidents of honor killings but these types of violence, and we can be sure there are many other which go unreported. We seek to discuss honor today so that we can become better informed as a community. We also hope to become better informed of the resources we have in our community via the representatives from our local reputable organizations who will be available during our breaks and after our discussion. These organizations, which are also co-sponsoring tonight's event, along with some Salam, include Mass Social Services Foundation, My Sister's House, and CARE Sacramento Valley. Our speakers for tonight include Sister Zahra Bilou, she's on her way, Imam Muhammad Abdul Aziz, and Sister Humaira Surushian. We will have a half an hour break for about 7:50 p.m. for the Maghrib prayer and light refreshments at that time. To begin with our program, I would like to introduce our first speaker of the evening, Imam Abdul Aziz. Imam Aziz is the religious leader of our Salam Islamic Center. Imam Aziz was educated in medicine, political science, sociology, Islamic history, and Islamic theology. He holds an MD from Ain Shams University, a bachelor's from Ohio State University, and a master's from University of Chicago. He has been involved in Islamic activism and education over 10 years. He has taught Islam at and worked with numerous institutions from the Midwest to the West Coast. Imam Aziz has made dozens of media appearances both local and national. He has been interviewed by the Sacramento Bee, the Sacramento News and Review, the Columbus Dispatch, and the Los Angeles Times. He has interviewed with most local TV channels and was featured on CBS News. Imam Aziz is a passionate advocate of interfaith work and dedicates much of his time educating the community about the true, peaceful essence of the religion of Islam. In his capacity as the Imam of Salam, he is a member of Sacramento Interfaith Service Bureau, and he does most interreligious dialogue in the area. Imam Aziz believes that the responsibilities of today's Imam include far more than leading prayer and giving answers to complicated questions about Islamic law. Imam Aziz counsels and mediates in family concerns, teaches classes for both the Muslims and non-Muslims, actively promotes and participates in the Sacramento Interfaith community, acts as a spokesperson and outreach coordinator, and organizes events at Salam. Please help me in welcoming Imam Aziz.
We're actually going to be starting with Sister Zahra Bilu today. Let me go ahead and read her introduction, and then we will surely get to Imam Aziz. So Sister Zahra Bilu is the Executive Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations San Francisco Bay Area Chapter. Zahra graduated from California State University Long Beach with degrees in Human Resource Management and Political Science, and earned her Juris Doctorate from the University of California Hastings College of Law, and was admitted to the California Bar in 2009. Zahra frequently provides trainings at local mosques and universities as part of CARE's efforts to empower the community while building bridges with allies on key civil rights issues. Zahra also represents victims of discrimination and advocates for positive policy changes that uphold civil rights for all. Her work with CARE SFBA has been highlighted in local and national media outlets, including KTVU, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, the Christian Science Monitor, and NPR. Please help us in welcoming Sister Zahra Bilu.
Assalamu alaikum, greetings of peace. Apologies for being late and that confusion and awkwardness. It's always a fun thing to start with, confusion. So, this is a difficult conversation for us to have in our communities, and I think for us to have in general. But I really appreciate that the mosque and the organizers came together to say we need to start talking about the impact of honor on the lives of women, particularly as it relates to changing times and increasing Islamophobia. Women and women's bodies have been political tools for centuries. This isn't new. It's something that always comes up, and women tend to always be pawns in these discussions. In ancient times, women were bought, sold, and married as part of political and business deals. During colonial times, all over the world, and even today, women are raped as a means of colonizers exerting violence and power over their subjects. Part of the attention on the Muslim world is so often what do women wear? And this happens both from inside the Muslim community and outside the Muslim community. We're so often being told we need to be liberated because we're forced to wear head veils, and yet inside the Muslim community you see conversations targeting women who do and targeting women who don't. The thing that I always share with people is that we see that when we focus on women's clothing, we take a step back as a community. That quite often when women are told that they cannot wear the headscarf, they want to wear the headscarf, and when they are told that they have to wear the headscarf, they want to take it off. And so essentially it becomes a tool, and rather than a means of bringing people closer to their religion or their spirituality, it brings them further away. So where are we? We have problems. I was a little concerned about having this conversation in particular because I'm not from Sacramento, and I thought, are they going to, throw stuff at me if I tell them that we have problems and I'm from outside the area? But, it's not Sacramento, it's not the Bay Area. It is that we have problems with the way we treat women. And I don't think that we can have an honest conversation about Islamophobia and hate crimes and the way other people talk about our community if we're not going to talk about that ourselves, if we're not going to do an honest assessment of what is happening inside our own community. It's not unheard of for young Muslim women to be forced into marriage. It is not unheard of for young Muslim women in the United States to be forced to wear a headscarf, or to be forced to not wear a headscarf. One of the stories that I think really touched me when I was in college was a friend who really wanted to wear a headscarf, and her parents told her, we will disown you if you choose to wear a headscarf. This was a woman who was in college. She was a legal adult, and yet she was being told what to do and what to wear by her very own family. And it happens both ways. We see women who are told, if you don't wear a headscarf, then we will disown you. We see people who are raped in marriage. We see children who are forced into marriage. We see women who are told that they cannot go to college because they are women. And it's an ongoing issue, and we don't talk about it. We don't talk about domestic violence. We don't talk about child abuse. We don't talk about the right of a woman to self-autonomy. And I know Imam Aziz will talk about the religious aspect of it, but I want to be frank that these cases are real. As a lawyer, I focus on civil rights and law enforcement abuses, but I hear all sorts of things in the community. I remember one story from a couple of years ago was that of a woman who had migrated to the United States to be with her husband. He told her he would keep all of her gold and cash for safekeeping. And she trusted him and she believed him. And then she found out he was cheating on her. And when she found out, he threw her out on the street with nothing in hand. She had nowhere to go in the United States, but on top of that, she couldn't go back to Pakistan because she was afraid of an honor killing. And so as much as we say that this is not a part of our religion, the fact that it exists is an ongoing issue. She was torn. Here she was in the United States, didn't speak English, was worried about her immigration status, not a dollar in hand, no capacity to work, and no one to turn to. The natural inclination is that her family should protect her, but she couldn't. She couldn't go back. She was afraid. I met her when she was in a domestic abuse shelter in the Bay Area. And that's a reality that actually exists. And these are American Muslims or Muslims of various ethnic backgrounds who are doing this. Is it condemned in the mainstream? Yes, but why does it continue to happen? So one, we should condemn it because it's wrong, right? And I can talk about Islamophobia and strategy and public relations, and I'll do that. But that's not the reason to condemn it. The reason to condemn it is it's wrong, right? It is against our religion, and that should be the baseline. That should be where we start from. That these things are not okay. And that for us to be good Muslims includes condemning injustice, which exists, right? It very much exists in our communities. Now the public relations piece of it, right? Why does it matter? Aside from the fact that we have a religious and a moral obligation to condemn it, why does it matter? Because one of the leading charges of the people rallying anti-Islam activists is the treatment of women, right? In Michigan recently, Pamela Geller, who's the executive director of a group called Stop the Islamization of America, which is an anti-Muslim hate group based in, I believe, Florida and New York, and they've made themselves really famous when they attacked Part 51, or what they call the Ground Zero Mosque, and by buying out bus ads and taxi cab ads across the country saying, we will help you seek refuge from Islam. So Pamela Geller, this woman outside of the Muslim faith, who clearly hates Muslims, has taken up the charge of saving Muslim women. And one of our challenges in combating her work is that there continue to be some very real examples that she can draw from. Did we condemn them as a community? Yes. But do they exist? Yes, as well. She recently hosted a conference in Michigan, the Jessica McCod Conference, and it was named after a young woman who had been killed in an alleged honor killing. We still don't know if it was, and her family, denies that it was. And yet Pamela Geller feels that it's okay for her to name her human rights conference, her alleged human rights conference. This is a woman, mind you, who's been identified as a hate activist by groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center and even groups like the Anti-Defamation League, not to mention CARE. So she's been named as a hate activist, but she's holding a human rights conference, and she's naming it after Muslim women that she wants to save. Right. I first came across Pamela Geller when she took up the case of a young Ohio woman, a teenager who had fled her home. This girl, the 16-year-old, fled her home because she believed that if she converted to Christianity, her parents would kill her. Whether or not it's true is one thing, but the fact that, again, these cases are used to attack our community is something that we should be aware of. She fled her home in Ohio. She hid out in a pastor's house in Florida. How she made it from Ohio to Florida, I don't know. But this is a 16-year-old former Muslim who is afraid of her family. There was an entire civil case about who had custody, and then she turned 18 before the case ended. But this was a rallying cry for Islamophobes who said, hey, this is a problem with Islam. This is what they're doing to women. A couple of other examples that I shared because I think they're serious enough that we should be talking about them. Everyone here has heard about the anti-Sharia bans, right? Oklahoma, Texas, Tennessee, it just died in Iowa this week. But over 24 states have introduced legislation to ban Sharia. Most of the people that are introducing these pieces of legislation don't even know what Sharia is, right? In their mind, it is the scary law that comes out of the scary book that those scary Muslims read. And so that's what they use to turn to elected officials and say, hey, we have a problem in our communities. One of the cases that sort of is used as a rallying cry in this campaign is a case out of New Jersey. And bear with me because this is a difficult case. There's a young couple, I believe they're Moroccan. The woman is a recent immigrant, and they're having marital issues. And her husband is raping her, right? Her husband is raping her multiple times. She goes to law enforcement. She seeks a restraining order. The court finds that yes, she was assaulted, that she was a victim of rape, but refuses to grant the restraining order because the man says, my religion gives me the authority to do this, right? And the court says, well, he sincerely believed that his religion made this treatment of his wife okay, that he should always have sexual access to his wife, and that whenever she objects, doesn't matter, that he has access to his wife. So he continues to rape her. And the court had said this was fine. Now, it was overturned on appeal. It was condemned by Muslim leaders in that community, but this happened. And that is one of the cases that is quite often cited in the anti-Sharia campaigns, because the court made a mistake and said, hey, he thinks that his book, his religious book says this, and we're going to defer to his book. It was wrong. Our religious book doesn't say that. But on top of that, even if it did, right, hypothetically, even if it did, which it doesn't, but if it did, it would still be subservient to the Constitution. Because when we talk about Sharia, we understand that there's a principle that requires that we submit to the laws of the land, right? That we honor our contracts, and that by being present in the United States and engaging in this country as citizens, that we are engaging in a contract, and that our contract says that violence is wrong. And yet here is this man who believes that his book, or his interpretation of his religious book, makes it okay to treat his wife in this way. And this is one of the rallying cries. This is quite often what is cited when people say, well, we have to ban Sharia because the courts are deferring to it, because the judge tried to interpret Quran. And it's problematic because until we can stop those things because they are wrong, not because of a public relations effort, but because they are wrong, because there is no place in them for our community, how do we hold ourselves up as a model? How do we ask for respect when we can't respect more than 50% of our community? The thing that comes up quite often when I talk about violence against women, and I use this line too, is that we talk about violence against women and we say, there's honor killings and there's forced marriages and there's all this, but a woman is sexually assaulted every 6 minutes in the United States, so who are they to say anything to us, right? Who are Americans to say anything to us about the way we treat women? And the problem with that comparison is that we assume that the current standard of violence against women, be it here or in Pakistan or in Saudi Arabia or in Europe, is an acceptable standard, right? That it makes it okay if we compare ourselves to people who are more violent than us. That it makes it okay if domestic violence is happening in the Muslim community but also happening in the broader community because, those Americans can't tell us what we're doing is wrong if we're doing it ourselves. Or, they can't tell us what we're doing is wrong if they're doing it themselves. But that's not the case, right? And this is why I started with why we need to oppose this kind of treatment of women. Why we need to redefine honor and redefine the way we treat our daughters, our wives, and our sisters. Because it's wrong, right? We're taught in our religion that we should stand against oppression, that we should speak against oppression, even if it is our own brothers and sisters committing it. And here, where we know that there is an ongoing problem, it starts at home. We have to stop the problem inside the community before we can turn our faces outwards and say, you can't say this about our community, it's not true. Quite often when we're talking to people about understanding Islam, we say, judge us by our teachings, but not by our practices. And so I'll leave you with the thought of, what do we do to bring our practices in line with our teachings? How do we make that consistent? Because until we do, when we turn around and we say, you can't judge us for the way we treat our women, or that, you're an Islamophobe and you don't know what you're talking about, we treat our women really well, we need to make sure that our own house is clean, that our practices are in line with the teachings, because these cases are problematic and shouldn't be happening on my clock, your clock, or anyone else's clock. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Sister Zahra. Imam Aziz.
Can you repeat my wife?
I'll work on that.
Salam. I wanted to, first of all, thank each and every one of you for deciding to join us on this blissful afternoon, and also wanted to thank our panelists, particularly Sister Zahra, who drove all the way from the Bay Area to join us. So, Jazakumullah khair, and thank you so much, Humaira, for also being with us tonight to provide her perspective as a therapist, while she's also a Muslim woman from Iran. And you know, as Sister Zahra said, this is a very sensitive topic, and judging by the turnout tonight, we can actually be sure of how sensitive this is for our community. And it is not that we reject the existence of these challenges in the Muslim community. It is that I think that our people are not necessarily accustomed to airing them out in public, in the presence of non-Muslims and Access Channel and all these kinds. We're not used to the idea of showing everyone else our dirty laundry, if you will. And you know, I understand where people are coming from, but I also do believe that there are things, if we don't talk about them with courage, with boldness, they will only get worse. And we just need to start the conversation about it, and that's precisely what we're doing. I share with you a story of a sister that came to my office a few months ago, and you know, she was really distraught. And she was basically, you know, she sat down and I asked her, you know, sister, you know, how can I help you? And she said, you know, there is this, you know, horrendous abuse that is going on in my household. So, you know, of course I was shaking my head and, you know, upset. And I started asking her questions about the nature of that abuse. So, you know, so tell me what happens, you know, what does it involve? And then she would say it would involve punching, you know, on the shoulders and, you know, sometimes slapping on the face. So, of course, you know, I'm shaking my head and I'm saying to myself, you know, it's this useless prick who does this to his wife. And so tell me, you know, emotions and, you know, what is the state of mind? And then she would say, well, you know, it starts with an argument and then we exchange profane words and emotions are heightened, and then you know, the hitting starts. So I kept asking her probing questions, and then at the end I was basically asking her, did you try to call the police, because you know, this is pretty nasty stuff? And then she said, well, my husband called the police once or twice. So I said, oh my God, why would he call the police? And then she was like, because I'm the one who was hitting him. This is a true story, by the way. And I, you know, the reason I bring this up is not to suggest that yeah, we see abuse in our community that is practiced by both men and women. You know, I just thought that you know, I was 100% prepared to believe that she was the victim of that abuse, and for a good reason, because there is plethora of evidence in the Muslim community that this stuff actually happens. And her case was the absolute exception. In fact, you know, I asked her repeatedly who her husband was, and she wouldn't tell me, because she thinks that would dishonor her husband in the Muslim community for people to know that he is subject of abuse by his own wife. So you can understand how complex these matters are for us as a Muslim community, and we really don't talk about these things at all. In fact, I don't remember any Islamic center over the years of my career ever that had ever approached this subject in any meaningful way. And you know, it wasn't my idea, by the way, to put this event together. I owe that to our outreach committee, to Sister Suzanne and her team. So, really just give them a round of applause for their courage. And my job, I think, in the next few minutes, possibly 20, 25 minutes, is to sort of like delve a little bit deeper into the current definitions of honor, sharaf, in Arabic, in the Muslim community. And as Sister Zahra said, we need to redefine honor. If we were, as men and women of the Muslim community, if we were to address this issue in an efficient and a meaningful manner, I think we ourselves need to understand that much of what we consider to be honorable behavior, much of what we consider to be dignified behavior is actually the farthest thing from honor. In my Facebook post, when I was referring to honor killings, I really say that I added the prefix dishonor, because there's nothing honorable about taking a life whatsoever under any circumstances, least of all this one. And so I wanted to start with a little story about the idea of honor, because the Muslim community has been struggling with this for a very, very long time, for over 1,000 years. The cultural practices of where Muslims come from often dictate how they perceive reality, how they develop social relations, how they interpret Islam itself. And we always have this struggle in the Muslim community between the subjugation of Islamic teachings to the advantage of cultural practices, and the other extreme of the complete abandonment of cultural practices, including beautiful cultural practices, under pretext of purifying Islamic practices and so forth. And so I will address primarily our Muslim community with this message. And our guests, please, if there's anything I say that you are unable to understand, please ask questions and interrupt me. But this is our own spiritual struggle as members of the Muslim community. And this is a problem that we need to start working on. And there's nothing wrong with seeking help, obviously, from others and outsiders and so forth. But that dialogue needs to start within us first and foremost. So, after the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, Muslims, basically Muhajirin and Ansar, right? The natives of the city of Medina and the immigrants that came from Mecca. And, the argument, I've said this before, I think that was one of rare cases in history where mass migration did not end up with a bloodbath. Usually when there is an immigrant community that is coming without preparation to basically live in another city, that city, the most humane of cities would create a little ghetto or something for those new immigrants, because it affects the economy, it affects social structure, and all kinds of issues might arise out of that. And that was one of those rare instances in history where the integration of the immigrant community took days to be concluded in a very successful fashion. And in less than a couple of weeks, they all had jobs and they all had, good starters in the new community that they started. And as Muslims, we look at Muhajirin and Ansar as, our role models, right? One of those days, this brotherhood, this incredibly successful example was about to be shattered in a second, right? One youth from the Ansar had a little altercation with a kid from the Muhajirin. And then they started having a fight about it. And then, this kid invited his family, and the other kid invited his family, and then they started saying, "Ya Ansar, come over here. Oh my God, Ya Muhajirin, come over here." And then they started, exchanging profanity in public, right? And then, how many of you heard of the story? Right? Not many, like 3 or 4 in our not very large audience. They started having a fist fight between Muhajirin and Ansar in downtown Medina, right? And then, they started saying, "I'm from this family. You should show respect to us. Oh, I'm from that family. We're from this clan. We have that status. We are the descendants of Ismail. We are the descendants." And then the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he was totally shocked. He came out of his house and said, "Oh my God, you are arguing with each other about the honor of national origin and tribe and family while I'm still alive amongst you? Those of you who remember this story, do you remember what he said at the very end? But what did he say at the very end of his statement? دعوها فإنها منتنة. Drop these arguments, for these arguments are only rotten. To think that there is honor in the mere fact that you belong to a certain family, or that you belong to a certain race, or that you have a certain national origin, this is a rotten way of thinking. Drop it. We came to this world in order to stop this discourse, in order to do away with these notions, right? Honor, and I will tell you exactly at the very end of my talk, can only be achieved through one course and one course only. And if that happened amongst real honorable men such as the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, it does not really surprise us that people to the present day are trying to derive a sharaf, honor, right, from all these sources, from all these illegitimate sources that we sort of use on a day-to-day basis. And obviously these men fought with each other, were about to fight with each other because their tribes meant a lot to them. In the khutbah today, those of you who were here, I was talking about Al-As ibn Rabi'. Al-As ibn Rabi' was the husband of Zaynab bint Muhammad, radiallahu anha, the Prophet Muhammad's daughter. And for 20 years, because he loved his family so much and he thought that their way was the honorable way, he would not become Muslim after his wife had become Muslim, even though in his heart he knew that that was the right thing to do, but he couldn't do it because he thought that he would dishonor his family, right? This stuff still happens, by the way, to the present day. So when we derive honor from illegitimate sources, we make huge mistakes, and it causes massive, massive disasters. And, the idea of not going against the way of our forefathers. Does that or doesn't it still happen in the Muslim community today? I don't want to go against the way of my family. I don't want to let my daughter get married to that person because he belongs to that culture. And this is not the way we do it in my culture, in my family, in my tribe, in my country, or whatever it is. Right? How often do you hear this stuff in the Muslim community? This is one of the primary reasons of most of the problems that we suffer from on a regular basis. Even as the Quran says, when the messengers come to the people, they basically start warning them. قَالَتْ رُسُلُهُمْ أَفِي اللَّهِ شَكٍّ. Their messengers start telling them, are you doubting the existence of God? And so on and so forth. And at the very end, they say to them, إِنْ أَنْتُمْ إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُنَا تُرِيدُونَ أَن تَصُدُّونَ عَمَّا كَانَ يَعْبُدُ آبَاؤُنَا. You are but humans just like us, and all you want is to turn us away from the religion of our forefathers. Right or wrong is irrelevant as long as it's the religion or the way of life or the culture of our families. It has to be the good thing to follow, and anything else is rejected. We do this on a regular basis. Many people consider honor to be derived from national origin. I hear this a lot in the community. And we've become a little bit subtle about it, but I still hear it. Like when you penetrate into certain social circles, so Arabs, a group of Arabs, they come together, they speak in a demeaning way about Iranians or South Asians or Turks or converts or African Americans, right? And they would have absolutely no shame about that. I'm not saying that all of the community does that, but these ills are there, and they air out at the right time under, safe circumstances. People basically air them out. Our families, they socialize based on those fabricated artificial lines that we have created for ourselves, right? Brother Nadeem was just talking to me before the event started that we are not able to even socialize properly based on the universality of Islamic brotherhood. So, and I speak for myself. When I have a social event, for example, at my house, I have to sit down with my wife and basically talk about who to invite. Are we planning on inviting people who will all talk about Egyptian politics? Or people who need to speak Arabic to each other without the discomfort of having to speak in English? Or are we talking about just a mixed group and English becomes the common language? We have to go through this debate. And then, I want a certain group, and then she wants another group. And she always wins. But the point is, we are not even comfortable socializing, with ease with the members of our community just on the basis that they're Muslim. If you even bring in the Muslim versus non-Muslim factor, that becomes even very, very, very complicated. And, to have Arabs and South Asians and converts and non-Muslims in one social gathering is quite unheard of in the Muslim community. And only Muslim leaders would do it, for other purposes, but we don't do it genuinely. And that has become a huge problem, and it's taking a toll on our community and its interaction within itself and with the outside world as well. How often did you hear of parents who refused to let their son or to let their daughter marry from another group because they consider that group to belong to an inferior racial or ethnic identification? They might not explicitly say it, right? But you know how it is. You know exactly how it is. We cannot get married to those people. I'm not saying they're all bad, but most of them are, right? And we keep characterizing people. This group is like this, and that group is like that. And then, they would be sitting with each other, and then, they would ask the father, why didn't you let your daughter get married to this guy? And he's Mexican. Oh, okay. It has become accepted. It does not incite debate anymore in the Muslim community. I told you this, I think, a few years ago. There is a sister, I'm not going to say where she comes from, but she basically had an affair. She had an intimate affair with a man, and she got pregnant. And then her father kicked her out. And he called every single family member in the community and elsewhere, and every friend, and everyone even like remote acquaintances, and he said to them, if you take my daughter in, I will not talk to you for the rest of my life. So not only that he kicked his daughter on the street, he made sure that she doesn't go anywhere. You know where she ended up? She ended up in a homeless shelter. And a Nation of Islam sister who used to work there called me, and she said, there's this girl, she's 17, she's been here for a couple of weeks, we don't know what to do with her. When I called her father, you know what his biggest issue was? He was not upset that his daughter had sex outside of wedlock. He was not concerned that his daughter was with a non-Muslim guy. He was not concerned about, sexually transmitted diseases. He was not concerned about a grandchild who was not legitimate. His biggest concern was that the ethnic group that guy belonged to. That was his issue. There's nothing else that concerned. In fact, he's not even religious. Like, he doesn't even pray. But that was his only issue. And again, for our guests, I'm not suggesting that this is how our community is, by the way. These are exceptional examples, really horrible examples. That's why they stand out, and we feel the need to bring them as really horrendous examples of how, when we let these things happen in our community, we get reduced to this terrible, terrible level of bad judgment. The Prophet ﷺ, one of the greatest declarations and pronouncements that he made, one that we are still proud of to the present day, is there is no difference or advantage between an Arab and a non-Arab, or black, white, or red. The distinguishing quality that makes people better is their consciousness of God. To be conscious of God in the way you treat your spouse, the way you treat your children, in taking care of your professional responsibilities at the workplace, in being prompt, in giving advice and helping your friends, getting involved in your community. Consciousness of God. At-taqwa, inna akramakum inda Allahi atqakum. the best of you, the most dignified of you, the most honorable of you in the sight of God is the one who is most conscious of Him. At any time, under any given circumstances. So the Prophet ﷺ came to shatter this notion that race somehow gives honor to the followers of this group or that group. But then, since the issue of honor killings, or dishonor killings as I call it, is hot, and it is one of the reasons we're putting this event together, I also need to address that as well. The notion that dignity and honor are somehow derived from a woman's chastity. That the honor of an entire family is dependent upon the chastity of one woman that belongs to that family. I mean, when we say sharaf al-'ayla, the honor of the family, in Arabic it sounds okay, I guess. Right? Oh, she did this, she destroyed the honor of our family. In Arabic or in Urdu it sounds fine to say. But in English, when we dissect it, the honor of an entire family of 200 people, 250 people who work so hard, who are otherwise great and successful and moral and distinguished, is shattered because of the wrong choices that one person in that family made. Does it make sense when we say it in English? It doesn't make any sense, right? And I don't know where that even comes from, like culturally, historically, religiously. I don't know where it comes from. And although Islam encourages men to be protective of their families, males or females, there is that added responsibility that the husband needs to not only feed his family or show affection, compassion, and love to his wife. You also need to protect your wife. Imagine if you're walking on a trail with your wife, for example, and then you heard a bear, and then the man just started running the opposite direction. What would you do? The reason I cite this is actually happened. One sister came to me asking for divorce because they were walking on the trail in Folsom, and there are no bears in Folsom, right? He heard the siren of a boat, and he thought it was a bear, and he saw the sign, on the trails that has a California logo. The California logo is a bear. So he doesn't really know English that well, so he thought that, okay, siren, logo, oh my God, there are bears in this area. So he started running, and he left his wife, so she came to me asking for divorce. That's dishonorable. Because a husband is supposed to protect his wife. You're supposed to persevere with her under such tough circumstances when the bears attack you. So Islam obviously encourages that you need to do whatever you can to protect your family, right? But here's the hypocrisy in Muslim culture, and forgive me if this is a little bit bold and scary for some of you. A guy in the Muslim community usually gets a fair reign to do whatever he wants, right? I counsel families sometimes when one of their daughters, for example, gets pregnant and she's not married, versus a guy who, and I quote the father, I just got some girl knocked up. He doesn't even want to know what her name is or where she comes from. It doesn't matter. And then he'd be like, boys will always be boys, And I say, well, boys should not always be boys. Because you know what? Boys need to eventually come out of age and be men. And have respect. Right? And be responsible. So, no, boys shouldn't always be boys. Why don't we say all girls will always be girls? They just get knocked up. Can you say that about your daughter? You can't. So we treat this matter with a double standard. If it's a guy, boys, they can stay up, later with their friends and do whatever. But when it's a girl, you got to be at home before 9 p.m. Right? We have these rules that we impose specifically on girls in our community. A guy gets away with acts of flirtation with the opposite gender, but a girl can't do that. And they're both wrong, right? Islam prohibits both practices, but if we're showing intolerance to this, we need to show intolerance to that as well. And I can go on and on examples on how we discriminate as parents sometimes between the way we treat boys and the way we treat girls. And then it comes to this particular matter. A guy sleeps with a girl, and then whatever happens, extramarital sex, whatever it is, we deal with it, okay? We try to get them married or whatever. But when a girl does that, the family completely loses it, right? And I'm a father, and I have children, boys and girls. And, may Allah protect us. I cannot even imagine myself having to deal with something like that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all from any of these really, really challenging issues that our families could go through. But I cannot imagine myself letting my son get away with something horrible and basically being so harsh and being so horrendous and oppressive on my daughter if she made the same mistake. And alhamdulillah, it's only God we thank for this. Our community here in Sacramento, I think Bay Area is also a good example, we don't have any history of honor killings. Did you hear of any of this? We don't have any of that. There's probably a few incidents that took place around the country, most recently the one in Canada, right? But even if we don't have honor killings, we have honor oppression. We have honor beatings. We have honor curses, right? Even if they don't kill their kids, may Allah protect us from that. But they really cause them so much grief on much smaller mistakes, and I think that is also just as bad. So what I'm saying is that we need to develop certain standards on what is acceptable and what is not acceptable as far as sexual behavior, and there is an agreement in the Muslim community. I don't think anyone would go against that extramarital sex is prohibited, that people need to wait until they get married. But these are the things that we need to teach our children and to help them build the moral character that allows them to achieve that under these difficult circumstances of our society. And also to be prepared to deal with it when it actually happens. And I would like for some of our community members, inshallah, to ask these questions when it's Q&A session. What happens when one of our kids does that? What do we do? You're telling us we're not supposed to kill our children. All right, what is the alternative? And I'm hoping, inshallah ta'ala, that we can provide you with an alternative tonight. Let me conclude, inshallah, with another story. How many of you heard of Hakim ibn Hizam? Only one person. I'm impressed. Two, his wife. Thank you, sister. Hakim ibn Hizam was Khadija's nephew. Does that make sense? You know Khadija? Who is Khadija? Prophet Muhammad's wife. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Hakim ibn Hizam was her nephew. His name is Hakim ibn Hizam ibn Khuwaylid. So Hizam ibn Khuwaylid, Hala bint Khuwaylid, and Khadija bint Khuwaylid, right? Hakim was a direct descendant of Qusay ibn Kilab. Qusay ibn Kilab is the great man who founded Quraysh, the most important tribe of Mecca at the Prophet Muhammad's time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. To belong to the family of Qusay ibn Kilab was an honor beyond imagination in the times before Islam. See, again, family. But the more important thing about Qusay ibn Kilab is that he was also descendant of Ismail alayhi salam, the son of Ibrahim, Prophet Abraham. So Hakim ibn Hizam was a direct descendant of Ismail. He was a direct descendant of Qusay ibn Kilab. You know where he was born? He is the only person on the face of this earth who was born inside the Kaaba. Inside. His mother was making a tawaf, and she was due, and then she had her labor pains, so they take her, the only place they found in which she can deliver the baby was inside the Kaaba itself. So they took him inside the Kaaba, and then she gave birth to her son inside the Kaaba. Again, look at the honor. Descendant of Ismail, descendant of Qusay ibn Kilab, he is from Quraysh, he is the nephew of Khadija. He was born inside the Kaaba, right? In addition to that, when the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ got married to Khadija, he and Hakim became very, very close friends. So he was such close friends with the Prophet ﷺ to add to the honor that Hakim had. Hakim also was the owner of Dar al-Nadwa. Dar al-Nadwa was the incredibly historical town hall that was owned by the sons of Qusay ibn Kilab, and it was the honor of the Arabs, so to speak, to have it. It was like basically a great museum. You think of it, in terms of a great museum that has an incredible collection of the arts, for example. So for the Arabs, that was their history, it was their heritage, embodied in Dar al-Nadwa, the town hall of the city of Mecca. So he owned that as well. Anything and everything that's meant to honor, Hakim ibn Hizam had. The only thing he didn't have was he did not accept Islam. Even when his closest friend came to him with the message, and it just didn't make sense to him, right? 20-some years later, he actually accepted Islam. And he used to say, the worst thing I've done in my life is that I delayed accepting the religion of my friend so much because I was deluded by what I considered to be honor. I did not want to bring this honor to my family and my heritage and the ideas and the history that I represent. He survived all the way through the time of Muawiyah, right? When he became Khalifa. And then one of those days he sold Dar al-Nadwa, the town hall of Mecca. He sold it. And of course for the Arabs, how could you do that? And to make matters worse, he actually sold it to a Persian man. He was a Persian Muslim man, but he sold it to a non-Arab. So Muawiyah was furious. He summoned Hakim ibn Hizam and he reprimanded, how could you do this? You sell the honor of the Arabs for 100,000 dirhams? What is wrong with you? And he says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I got this for a bottle of wine when I was young. When I was a teenager, I bought it for a bottle of wine. It's just walls. It's just walls and bricks. It represents nothing. Back in the days of Jahiliyyah, honor used to be defined by family and possession and heritage and lineage and ancestry. Today, honor is defined by taqwa. اليوم الشرف بالتقوى. يا أمير المؤمنين, what are you talking about? You know what? I'm going to take the 100,000 dirhams and give them away as charity. It means nothing to me anymore. I wasted my childhood, I wasted my adult life going after this facade of honor, thinking that this is what brings people honor. What brings me honor is to be conscious of God. It's to make decisions based on what pleases Him. It's to be cognizant of His presence in my dealings with my business, with my family, with my friends, with everyone I know. That is the only source of honor. Race, family, heritage, status, possessions, material belongings, all that is absolutely nothing. The Prophet Muhammad came and shattered all of that and sent it to oblivion. Honor is derived from piety and conscious of God. And I wanted to really end my discussion mentioning that because I want us to repeat the same thing. Honor has nothing to do with all of these definitions that we have artificially fabricated for ourselves. Honor has to do with how conscious you are of God under the most difficult of circumstances. And if you follow that code, I promise you, you will, inshallah, will never fail. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Imam Aziz, for that really good talk. And now Sister Suzanne is going to be reading the statements from our co-sponsors, the Mass Social Services Foundation and My Sister's House. Thank you.
I'm going to begin by reading CARE's statement. CARE condemns all acts of oppression and violence against women. The tragic incidents which have come to be known as honor killings occur because of cultural understandings of honor, many of which predate Islam. Despite attempts to link these killings to Islamic practices, they have no basis in Islam. CARE recognizes that these horrific acts threaten the dignity conferred upon women by God, and as such stand in contradiction to the Islamic understanding of justice. CARE believes that it is only through a reframing of the discussion of honor within Muslim communities that true change can happen. So that's CARE. We have Mass Social Services Foundation. Mass Social Services Foundation supports the effort of Salam to initiate a thoughtful public discussion of Islam and cultural codes of honor and shame found in Muslim communities. Islam does not support the use of threats, coercion, and violence to enforce codes of honor. Some codes predate Islam. People from other faiths may follow codes of honor as well. The number of Muslim families that use coercion to enforce cultural codes of honor in Sacramento is unknown. Until a local shelter or an emergency call line is established, we will not know the true extent of the problem. We urge any family or individual who is considering exercising coercion, threats, or violence of any kind to seek help from an imam to resolve their problems within an authentically Islamic spirit of consultation, reconciliation, mercy, and forgiveness. Mass Social Services Foundation offers information and referral services, Islamic-based peer counseling, support groups, and workshops which emphasize successful and healthy parental, marital, and family relationships in harmony with Islam. Okay, now My Sister's House. Efforts by organizations like Salam Islamic Center, Mass Social Services Foundation, and CARE are pivotal in the struggle to end acts of violence that hurt so many. My Sister's House seeks to protect women from injustices such as honor violence, as well as prevent it through outreach and education. It is our hope that our Muslim sisters and children may never know such physical and emotional harm. But if they were, that they would come to My Sister's House for help. We have been very privileged to assist our Muslim sisters, and our doors are always open to them. If you know someone who needs our services or would like more information, find us at 916-930-0626 or www.mysistershouse.org. My Sister's House is the only nonprofit organization in the Central Valley which specifically addresses the issue of domestic violence within the Central Valley's highly diverse Asian Pacific Islander community. With the shelter serving up to 6 women and children at any given time, My Sister's House has already been able to provide over 15,000 bed nights of shelter since first opening its doors in April 2003. My Sister's House is an inclusive organization that assists women and children of all cultural backgrounds who are in need. Okay, so the next portion of our evening includes a segment from CBS program 48 Hours Mystery. The episode was titled A Family's Honor. It aired April 7th of this year and discusses the story of Noor Medeki from Peoria, Arizona.